Welcome to iPad Pros, the show all about using your iPad to be productive and get work done. I'm Tim Chen, host of the show.
Oh yeah, actually I'm not sure how many people do this. I use my calendar as a log of things that I have done, not just things that I should do or things that are upcoming in the future. What I'll do is I'll check into a task and check out. So I've got a particular key press combination that allows me to say this task is in progress, and it adds a little tag. When I mark that task done, which again is another key press, just Command D, done, marking it in progress or checking in adds a start time at the beginning of that line. Marking it done adds an end time, and then also triggers Fantastical's URL scheme to add that task to the calendar with the beginning and start time.
Welcome back to another episode of iPad Pros. This is a really packed episode that I think you're really going to enjoy. Joining us is Jacob Sam LaRose. Jacob runs a writing initiative he started back in 2009. We dive into a bunch of different topics, including his custom ergonomic keyboard that he built, the apps he uses to write and run his writing initiative, and why the iPad is the perfect computer for him. As a reminder, you can support the podcast over patreon.com/iPadPros or by subscribing in Apple Podcasts. By supporting the podcast, you'll get both iPad Pros and Vision Pros early. My sincere thanks to everyone that supports the show. With that, here's my discussion with Jacob. Enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, Jacob.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thanks for finding the time. I know it's been a busy time of year. I know work stuff is kind of hectic for you right now, so thanks for finding the time in your schedule.
Hey, I would make the time. Big fan of the podcast. Big fan of the reason for being for this podcast. So yeah, it's lovely to be here.
Excellent. Yeah, and before we get too far in, can you kind of share a little bit about your background, yourself, and your current iPad setup?
Yeah, sure. So I am Jacob Sam LaRose. I have a kind of a strange name. My mother's family is Sam's. My father's family are LaRoses. And the LaRoses have a space between the La and the Rose. And just to make it even more complicated, someone thought it would be a good idea to throw a hyphen in between the Sam and the LaRose. So it's a nightmare for bank forms and all of that kind of official documentation. But yeah, that's who I am. That's my real name. As a poet, writer, performer, creative consultant, artistic director, I'm one of those strange people who has a lot of different roles and wears a lot of different hats. But as someone who has all these different roles and has a kind of performative existence, I'm sometimes asked if that's my real name. Yes, it is my real name. I did not change my name just to make it more difficult for myself.
It's not like a poetry name. Yeah.
It's not a poetry name. No, that is my given name. Yeah. But yeah, that's who I am. Poet, writer, performer, artistic director, creative consultant, editor, facilitator. Everything I do is around creative development, creative writing, creating space for people to value their own expression and figure out what's possible for what it is that they might want to say.
Excellent. And what iPad setup are you currently rocking these days?
So I am on an iPad Pro 12.9, one of the M1s from 2021.
Brilliant.
512 gigs. And yeah, it's doing me well. It's doing me fine, actually. I am very, very happy with this model.
Yeah, that's the model I have, except I went with the ungodly expensive 1 terabyte model.
Which gives you the extra RAM, right?
It does, yeah. People always forget about that RAM when they go to configure it. It's like, why is it that much more for 1 terabyte? Like, you get the RAM too. Yeah.
Indeed.
So, there are rumors of new OLED iPads. You're happy with yours, though, as am I. I'm sure, yeah.
I really am. I think the whole OLED thing and, thoughts on what it might take for me to upgrade to anything else that comes out in the short term or midterm future. I can't really think of anything compelling off the top of my head that would make me say, yeah, I want to give this one up and go for something next. The whole OLED thing, it wonderful, great, yes, but I'm so happy with the iPad that I currently have that it doesn't seem to make that much of a difference for me. Then again, I say that.
New and shiny is always
new and shiny is always something you need to allow space for.
Yes.
And I know, in terms of my
and if the keyboard is if the new keyboard is exclusive to this new generation, maybe as a writer you like that keyboard in some way that just drives you over to spend the ungodly amount to upgrade for that
Now,
as well.
when you say keyboard, are you talking hardware, or are you talking something within the OS?
The Magic Keyboard, I hear, is getting this crazy new redesign. Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to drop a bomb and say I'm really not fussed.
No?
Not fussed at all. Not fussed. I've never owned a Magic Keyboard. I've owned iPads from the very. I've owned iPad since the very first iPad, and I've never really bought into the Magic Keyboard side of things. Great that it works well for so many people, but me personally, I'm one of those strange people who doesn't need an iPad to be attached to the keyboard.
Okay.
So I run my iPad in a very simple portfolio sleeve kind of case kind of thing. Ned Relo, fantastic kind of origami case. So the front lid or front part of the case serves well as a stand, and that stand kind of turns from portfolio to landscape as you wish. Love that case, really simple, keeps it quite minimal. And the keyboard that I work with is, again, a very minimal ergo mechanical keyboard. So the whole thing about kind of dedicated Magic keyboards that might only work with a particular model, I'm sorted. I'm fine. That's not really a limitation or consideration.
That's awesome. And if I were smarter, that's the way I'd do it. These paired accessories, they really get you. You buy the iPad. Oh, it's only this much. Then you add the $350 keyboard.
Add the keyboard, add the pencil, add everything. Add your screen protection, or whatever it is that makes the surface of your screen feel like real paper, and so on and so forth. It all adds up. It all adds up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the keyboard's the real one. Because that thing's so expensive, and it is. I enjoy it. I like the form factor of this laptop thing and pop off, but it would be nice to not have that as the tether of with upgrade costs and all that. As far as your iPad usage, you're happy with the 12.9-inch screen size? Has a smaller iPad ever appealed to you, like a mini alongside this iPad, or is the 12.9 size for you?
No, for sure. I've been through almost all of the iterations now of particularly the iPad Pro. In terms of the range of different iPads available, I bought into the iPad Mini with the very first iPad Mini, the one, upgraded to the second one, kind of had that around as a supporting device for a while, and then jumped up to a 5. So I had the 5th generation iPad Mini for a fair while, and when the 6 landed, I was up on that, and I love that as a supporting device for the larger size 12.9. The iPad Mini for me feels like my notepad.
Okay.
It's kind of like, so as a writer, I used to spend a lot of time on stationery, right? There's a particular Japanese stationery store in nearby Piccadilly Circus.
Yeah.
As a Londoner, I used to visit quite a bit, and they have taken almost as much money from me as Apple has, I think, with the...
Do you have a favorite fountain pen brand, or...
I'm not quite a hardcore pen aficionado.
Okay.
My pen tastes are relatively modest. I was quite happy with these Muji gel ink pens.
Okay.
The
nice.
0.38 tips, right? No hardcore fountain pens for me. In terms of the stationery,
because that can be a very big rabbit hole. Yes.
Oh, that is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Right? That's a whole other niche that you can fall into. I used to spend quite a bit of money on Moleskine notepads, Muji notepads again. There was a particular brand called Start Here NYC that used to do these beautiful 3-tier notepads at one point with kind of lined paper and plain paper and graph paper all in the same notebook. Absolutely beautiful. I was a real stationery geek at one point, and I kind of switched over to the iPad as a notebook, and the mini form for that is absolutely beautiful. It has that same kind of size, and I do often, because I have the pencil. I have so it's the one pencil that I can use across both of the iPads that I own. I do tend to use the pencil much more so on the iPad mini, and use it truly as that kind of handwritten notebook vibe, as opposed to the larger iPad, which feels more like I hesitate to say laptop or what, but it's my primary computing device. It's the main computer that I have in my life. So that, although the keyboard that I use, it's a multi-device keyboard, so Bluetooth. I can connect to the mini from that keyboard at a key press. What generally tends to happen, particularly when I'm at home in my home office, what generally tends to happen is that I will make note. I mean, even as I'm standing right now, I have the iPad mini at hand, screen open into concepts, and the iPad mini, the Apple Pencil at hand to kind of quickly capture notes and thoughts and whatnot. And the iPad Pro is sat in its stand with my keyboard in front, and it's that kind of split that I make use of.
That's awesome. Yeah, I miss the days of doing the dual iPad lifestyle, because it is nice to have a smaller iPad around. And
yeah, and it's also, I mean, so one of the joys of the iPad is it can do similar things to the laptop that you might use, but also the form factor allows you a little more flexibility, right? So one of the things I'm aware of, being a compulsive note taker, I might sit in a meeting and straight away, you want to make notes. If you have your laptop screen flips up and whatnot, and you've got this kind of barrier between yourself and the people that you're sitting in this meeting with, right? Much more often now, or well, actually all the time, because all I use is iPads for this kind of thing. I'll just have the mini in hand, and I'll be making notes directly on that screen, and there's much less of a barrier. I'm much more present in that conversation, as opposed to having this device between myself and the other people that I'm speaking with. So yeah, I really do. I appreciate the mini form factor, but that, and also the fact that it can do just about everything else that I do on my iPad Pro. And it can be that functional in kind of more challenging environments. Say, for example, I've just come back from spending 2 weeks on the road, delivering training for writers and teachers across the UK. And being on trains, yes, I can, if I get a proper table seat, I can pull the iPad 12.9 out. But in those smaller seats where you've just got the fold down table on the back of the seat in front of you, actually it's a lot more convenient to just stick the mini there. And yes, I can still connect the keyboard and type away and handle emails and do all that kind of thing. But the space, it's a much better use of space to work with the mini. So I love that flexibility. I love that.
Yeah, and the keyboard, it's in the show notes here. The Fifi Keyboard, is that what's called?
Fifi. Yeah, the Fifi. Yeah,
I love it. It's two pieces, so like half the keyboard. It seems like with the mini, you could have half your hand like kind of Joy-Con style with Nintendo, like half your hand next to each side, almost. Like, is that kind of the way it works?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's a split keyboard. So what you'll see if you were on one of these trains that I've been traveling on over the past couple of weeks, you walk by and you see this guy with this strange keyboard, and he'd have this screen in the middle, and on either side of the screen you've got the two halves of a keyboard, and it's also it's like a 36 key keyboard.
Yeah, it looks like it's missing. Like, is there a return key? I'm not sure if I see a return key there.
Now you say it's missing. I say all of the keys that I need are present there. So yeah, it's got a very reduced kind of minimal layout. But one of the things that's said about these kinds of keyboards, as a way of explaining it, is we're used to the idea of using the Shift key to access different symbols or different keys that are not physically present, or that we don't think of as being physically present, right? So we don't have a separate key for lowercase a and uppercase A, for example, right? We hold the Shift to get the uppercase A. It just so happens that on these kinds of keyboards, you have keys called layer keys that allow you to access different layers of layouts on the one keyboard. So if you look at my keyboard, you may observe that there is a numpad missing. So there are no number keys, just the regular kind of QWERTY layout with a couple of symbols on the right hand side. But I know that if I hold down one of my layer keys, the left side of my board offers me a numpad, where the W key is number 1, E is number 2, R is 3, so on and so forth, right? Sounds kind of weird, sounds kind of complicated. Muscle memory accounts for a lot of this kind of thing, right? So if you're thinking about it consciously, if you're listening to me describe this, that might sound like, ugh, that's a bit challenging. Give me my full-size keyboard instead. But I'm so used to working this way, and so many other people get into these kinds of minimal ergonomic layouts, and that you just get used to where things are. Such to the extent that when I first started getting into ergomechanical keyboards, I was fascinated by the idea of having backlighting, so that you can see where your keys are while you're typing at night, right? And the more time I spent with these keyboards, particularly these minimal ones, I realized that actually I just know where everything is. I don't need the lighting. I don't need to see. And that's aided and assisted by the fact that there are so few keys to actually remember the positions of. So yeah, it works out. It works out quite well.
I'm curious, is there a way to do a hard break return? I imagine when writing poetry, sometimes you need that. Or am I wrong there?
Yeah, for sure. So the return key, not everyone will be able to. Maybe we'll put my key map in the show notes for this, so that people can kind of refer to what it is that I'm talking about. But the inner thumb key on the right-hand side of the board, that's my return key.
Ah, I see that now. Yes. Okay.
Right. So I have space on the other inner thumb key and return on the right hand side. So that key is there, and everything else is available with a simple key press.
Excellent. Yeah, and you have an external monitor. You're working on right now. I'm curious for your desk setup. Do you have a different keyboard? Is this your mobile keyboard, and do you have a different kind of desk setup?
This is my primary keyboard. I do have a selection of keyboards. I've got an old school Mac keyboard that's like full-sized with numpad and all that kind of thing. I haven't touched. It's like one of those old school aluminium or aluminum, however that's pronounced. But yeah, I've got one of those old school full-sized keyboards from way back when. I haven't touched it for over a decade. It's just a showpiece now. This Fifi keyboard is my daily driver, and I use it for everything. And again, because I can connect to various different devices, it travels with me, but it also sits on my desktop setup. It's capable of all things.
Nice. Does it fold up in any way, or like in charging it? How does that all?
So charging it, it's USB-C. So there's the brains of this particular board. They're called so each side has a kind of microprocessor, and the microprocessors that make these boards wireless, they're called Nice Nanos. Nice Nanos charge via USB-C. And I've got these kind of little MagSafe connectors in them, so I can just snap a USB-C keyboard on and off. I can snap a USB-C cable on and off really quickly. So charging is easy, and there's a little power switch underneath the MagSafe connectors, so that you can pack it away quite nicely without worrying about it inadvertently tapping or triggering any keys. And because it's such a small board, and because it's split, I have a really nice little case. Actually, it's a repurposed case for a pair of old headphones, a pair of AKG headphones. It's the perfect size. I love it. I love it when you have that kind of moment of, hey, this thing that I've had sitting here thinking that I might make use of it at some point in the future, but never knowing what I was going to actually use it for. It turns out to be perfectly designed for this keyboard that I built. And yeah, so the back to back, when you put the two halves together, they fit perfectly into this nice little headphones case, and that served me well for travel. It's a hard case, so yeah, I can throw that in my bag and go with it. In fact, actually, I should say this keyboard, like I say, I kind of put it together as a Christmas project. It's the second mechanical keyboard I've built. But it's a bit naked at the moment. It is literally just the PCB that I placed an order for, and the switches kind of fitted into that PCB without the two. So you're supposed to have two other layers at least on a board like this, or you kind of put it into a case that kind of surrounds the PCB. And I just haven't got around to ordering the case yet. And I was so keen to actually get the majority of it built before I got busy. I went ahead and just, put the switches in, got it up and running, and I've been using it in this kind of low profile, naked format. And actually it works really well for me. So I'm in two minds as to how much I'm actually going to add to it. I will probably just add one more plate to keep the switches neatly and solidly and firmly in place. But other than that, I'm really happy with the way that it is.
No, it looks pretty neat. So this is not something you buy off the shelf, it sounds like.
No, this is a project, right?
Yeah.
So you can place orders for some of these things. You can have people build them for you and whatnot. But yeah, this was my foray. So while over the COVID period and the lockdown period, while some people were, making banana bread and things like this, I was teaching myself ergomechanical keyboards and figuring out how one might build something like this.
That's
so
cool. Yeah, I'm fascinated by this thing. It'll be in the show notes with a bunch of pictures and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stage Manager, I'm curious. I know there are key combinations you're showing in here that enable that kind of stuff, or split screen, I believe. Are you using Stage Manager? And if so, in what kind of context?
Yeah, so two things there. The where you were talking about the key combinations and things, because the keyboard is programmable, I can do that. Yes, I can have a little look through that little layover that shows you all the iPad OS keyboard shortcuts, and I can program them into specific combinations on my keyboard to make that easier to access. So I've done that with a few things like slide over, because I use slide over quite a bit. Like, for example, I'll keep a calendar in slide over. And for this reason, I use both iCal and Fantastical. And I'll typically keep Fantastical in slide over so that at a single key press, I can just have the calendar come up from one side of the screen, have a quick look at where I am in the day, and then dismiss it just from one key combo press. So I find that really useful. Beyond that, though, where you were asking about Stage Manager, I've only actually really gotten into Stage Manager in the last few weeks. There are a few people that I speak to who've been trying to nudge me towards Stage Manager for a little while. Shout out to Denny. Denny's a fantastic individual who does a lot of writing about iPads and really kind of champions the cause of iPads. And he was recommending Stage Manager as a way of working, and I think he's in that whole kind of Stage Manager setup quite a bit for most of his iPad usage. Me personally, I tried it out when it was first announced. Didn't quite land for me. Tried it again another couple of times after that. Obviously, it's improved since it was initially released. And it was really just, like I say, a couple of weeks ago that I thought, hey, let me plug my monitor in and see what it is that I can do. And I'm not sure exactly what it is that's made a difference this time, but this time is the time that has stuck for me thus far. So yeah, I'm really enjoying having the kind of large screen behind the iPad, and I've got it set up so that the iPad, again, I have this kind of standing desk setup, so the iPad is kind of at a decent eye level. I do use it as a useful screen. It's a little ahead of the monitor. The monitor is a little further back on the desk in the distance, and that works beautifully in terms of the kind of resolution and aspect ratios and whatnot. And it's making a lot of sense in my workflow.
Good, yeah. I kind of bounce back and forth. When I'm on external display, of course, you need to use Stage Manager, but on the iPad itself, I bounce back and forth between split screen and Stage Manager because I do like just the simple split screen implementation, not bothering with a bunch of windows. Yeah.
That's a really interesting point, actually. On the iPad itself, I don't use Stage Manager on the iPad.
Yeah.
I only really use Stage Manager when I have an extended display connected, and it's just on that extended display.
Yeah.
As you say, I love that kind of split screen way of working, and I think this is something about why it is that the iPad works so well for me and has worked so well for me. Obviously, I'm not incapable of using, windowing as a way of working with different applications and whatnot. But I think there's a way in which my mind works that responds really well to limiting the number of different things I have to manage on my screen. So having that kind of focus, some people see it as a limitation, but I've always really appreciated it as a feature. Actually, the iPad being something that supports at one point single tasking and now a degree of multitasking with a range of flexibility that can allow you to get multiple things done without necessarily having so much choice that you are more focused on exactly where your windows are positioned or how many different things you can squeeze onto a screen. And, for me personally, it's just easier to get on with what it is that I'm supposed to be doing rather than noodling too much,
For sure. Yeah, I enjoy the fluid nature of like swapping out the split screen apps by dragging stuff around and just like it's fun. I don't know. As far as other computers in your life, is there a Mac in your life that does like the one or two tasks that you can't do on iPad quite yet?
Yeah, they're. So I default at times to an old, I think it's a 2015 MacBook. It's a beautiful little thing. If I was still in that world, I'd be very happy with that kind of format as a laptop and whatnot. I only really fire it up when I need to write firmware for my keyboard. And when I say that, it's literally just about flashing the mic. So every time I update my key map, and say, oh, I want to shift where that key is to another position on the keyboard. I do that via GitHub and then download the firmware, and I have to write the firmware to the keyboard. And there's this slightly frustrating, or not even slightly, somewhat frustrating bug that I'm sure there's a reason for it, so I'm not sure if I can precisely call it a bug, but when you're trying to do that from iPad OS, you get this error. I can't remember exactly what the error message was. I think it also at one point was coming out via Mac OS, but it got kind of sorted very quickly for Mac OS. But yeah, this is stuck around for a fair while. I remember there was a revision of iPad OS a year or two back that allowed you to write firmware, but that for some reason was rolled back in some way. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Other than that, it's real isolated moments at this point in time with the way that I'm currently working, with the range of different things that I do. It's only really isolated moments where I need to crack open the MacBook for anything, really. I had to do an interview in Second Life. Wow.
Huh.
Yeah, there was a project. I had to write something in response to an artist's work, and that artist was very invested in kind of glitch art. And he proposed, when it came around to doing this kind of extended interview, he proposed that we do this interview in Second Life, and we record it and put it out into the world that way. And that was something that I couldn't do on the iPad, so I had to break out the MacBook. I've got a couple of Mac Minis, old Mac Minis here as well. I've got like a 2012 Mac Mini. And I've got so these are all legacy machines, right? I've got a 2010 iMac sitting somewhere. Again, this is more of a display device than it is. And when I say display, I mean literally just something to look at. I haven't turned it on for a while. But yeah, the iPad is what does the majority of it. The MacBook is what picks up any of the slack that iPad OS leaves over. And the rest of the Apple hardware is just for legacy's sake, for show, and for saying, I once was a hardcore Apple user, and Apple is still kind of in my heart. But yeah, I'm an iPad guy through and through these days.
Excellent. Yeah, I just inherited a 2012-ish Mac Mini from a family member that's moving, and he's like, "Do you want this? I have no need for it." It's like, actually, it's got the built-in Super Drive. This seems like a perfect iTunes match machine if I ever saw one. They don't even make Macs with optical drives anymore. This is great. Yeah.
This is it. And those 2012, I mean, obviously much more modern minis out that do fantastic and wonderful things, but those 2012 Mac minis were pretty upgradable.
Yeah. You can just pop the back off and yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, for keeping old tech relatively modern or usable in a contemporary sense, I think those 2012 Mac minis were great.
Yeah, because I have a 11-inch MacBook Air from 2011. And up until now, that's been my only Mac, and that's what I've been using for iTunes Match. I took up the external super drive to that sucker. But I'm very excited to get this Mac Mini in use because I think this will be I'll actually do the iTunes Match thing more than once a year because it's less of a pain in the butt to try to hook that up and get it ready. Yeah. So, let's dive into, some of the work you actually do. And not in my questions here. I'm actually curious with poetry writing. Do you use any kind of special apps for writing poetry that you kind of separate out from your other writing? Is that a different kind of environment for you when you?
Not really, no. Funnily enough, so I use Drafts for just about all of my writing.
Okay.
I'm a member of the curious clan of Drafts users. I have so much love for that app. I used to be a hardcore Scrivener guy. Love Scrivener and what Scrivener is capable of, but when I made the shift to the iPad, I was looking for something that just served my needs without the rest of the additional functionality that I wasn't making use of, and just felt like psychic baggage. When you've got
it took a while for Scrivener to finally make it to iPad.
To catch up. Yeah. And I hear they're working on a kind of stripped back application that I think is going to be also for iPad OS. So I'm kind of curious to see where that will go. But when word processors, Microsoft Word, for example, when I used to use Word, there were so many buttons and so many tools and things, and 90% of that I did not use. I just needed it to be essentially a text editor, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes round to me writing poetry or writing anything really on my iPads these days, Drafts is where everything starts. Drafts is where all of the ideas are developed, and I've gotten really comfortable with the way that Drafts works, and there are actions that I've put in place to make Drafts work even better for me. I have my own styles in terms of theming Drafts and whatnot, and my own syntaxes and whatnot. So I use my own kind of stripped back version of Markdown. The one thing about Markdown that's kind of problematic for writing poetry is that whole thing of in strict Markdown, to indicate again the hard returns that you were talking about earlier, you actually use two spaces, right? And that was always a gotcha for me when I was rendering poems from the text that I was writing in the actual editor. So I kind of made my own edits to a syntax for Drafts, and that serves really well for allowing me to manage my own writing in Drafts very simply, very cleanly, and yet be able to output documents that are usable in other settings.
Do you have an organizational system in Drafts that kind of separates everything?
Yeah, so Drafts allows you to create different workspaces, which are kind of like folders. This feels like it's going to be a Drafts tutorial, right?
Yeah.
Check out the website. There you go. And
Yes.
no, Drafts allows you to create different workspaces, which are kind of like folders, and you can create those workspaces on the basis of different tags. So it's kind of like a smart foldering system. Right. So, yes, because I use Drafts for so many different ways of working, I can separate, and I do separate out the different types of drafts documents that I have in there, so that I can move between different categories of drafts entries really easily. So yes, all my writing is in one workspace. My daily journals and logs are in another workspace. I use Drafts for workout logs. Tracking what it is that I do in workouts and whatnot. So there's a workspace for that. Range of different things.
Very cool. Is mind mapping a part of your tool set when you're trying to get ideas out before you go into the writing phase?
For sure. So there are a couple of different, there's mind mapping, and then there's like a kind of a freehand sketchnoting way of working. So mind mapping, I'm currently using Mindnode, which is a really beautiful app. Yeah, let's not downplay the importance of aesthetics.
It's important.
These are very,
it's like, you want a pretty workspace. You really
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. These are important considerations here. And yeah, I mean, it looks great, but also it has that kind of functionality in terms of being able to, so I can, using URL schemes, I can connect Mindnode's maps to notes in Drafts and move between them quite seamlessly. And again, kind of going back to customizing it for my particular workflow, my syntax, the syntax that I've created allows me to very simply create these links that without having to type out the whole URL scheme, I can just type the name of the mind map as a clickable link that takes me directly to it. So I love that kind of connectivity. I love apps that work well with each other. URL schemes, what a blessing, what a wonderful thing that URL schemes are. I love apps that exist across iOS and iPadOS. So the fact that Mindnode, for example, I may not use my iPhone as a primary platform for mind mapping, but knowing that I can call up my mind maps on the phone as well as on the iPads, that's a real boon as well.
You mentioned sketchnoting. Is there a certain app you use for that?
Yeah, there are a couple of apps that I use actually, and they kind of overlap in the way that I work with them. But yeah, I use an app called Muse, and I also use Concepts. And Muse, for me, is a little more document orientated. So I'll have, let's say, for example, this training that I was referring to doing a couple weeks ago. Or over the past couple of weeks, I was delivering these training sessions for writers and teachers. So within each training session, I'd be referring to a project framework document, a handbook, which was either the teacher handbook or the artist handbook, the agenda for the actual training session. And I'd have all these documents open, and in Muse, I created this kind of workspace that had the selection of those documents available alongside my handwritten or sketched out notes. And again, being able to split screen, I could very easily have these two documents alongside each other with a slide over to just a canvas that I could make handwritten notes on. And it's all the same workspace. So it's all in the same place. Because I'm delivering this program of trainings, it makes sure that everything is coherent and I don't have to look in a number of different places for this set of different thinking. And it provides me with a wonderful way to work. Concepts now is just an infinite canvas. One of the reasons I love working with concepts alongside something like Muse is that, so Muse is quite opinionated in terms of its zoom levels at the moment. So it will only allow you to zoom in and out so far. With something like concepts, because it is that kind of infinite canvas vibe, you can zoom all the way in and all the way out. There's no limitation. You can move the screen around. That's a really important thing for me. I'm kind of all over the place, right? If I'm sketching, if I'm making a note on something, I'm going in various different directions. I'm turning the canvas around. I'm going wherever it is that my mind needs to go in order to kind of create this spatial representation of how it is these ideas are emerging. Muse is a little more kind of refined and contained than that. Concepts allows me to go wherever it is that I want to go. So using the two of those alongside in different contexts and different settings has proven to be really fruitful for me.
Have you tried out Apple's Freeform app and given it a shot to see what it's like?
Yeah, I did. I tried it when it was first released, and then I tried it again a little while after that. It just didn't land for me. It didn't for the times that I tried it out. It didn't offer the same level of comfort. And to be fair, maybe part of that is just what it is that you're used to, right? So I'm very used to working with concepts. I've been working with concepts for years now, right? And Muse I've got very comfortable with. I mean, I remember seeing Muse when it was just a concept pitch that was being put forward for different ways of working with the iPad as a new form of computing, right? This kind of touchscreen computing, pencil and canvas kind of thing. So I'm kind of heavily invested in Muse and the way that it works. Freeform came along and it was doing some of the same things. It didn't have the same kind of polish as Muse or concepts. There were just little gotchas, things that didn't work quite as nicely as what it was that I was able to do in either of the other apps. So I'm kind of keeping my eye on Freeform, but it hasn't yet come through as something that would disturb my use of either Muse or Concepts for now.
So tell me a bit about your creative writing initiative. You founded it back in 2009, and how has it evolved over this decade plus? Like, how's it look today versus back then?
Yeah, it's been a decade. Wow, that ages me. That makes me feel old. So
yeah, you started this a year before the iPad came out, 2009.
Yeah. Good point on that, actually. Yeah, so when I started this program, I'd been running a similar program for 2 or 3 years before this current one. And that allowed me to frame some thinking in terms of what it is that I wanted to do with something like this. Essentially, this is a program that is a creative development program for young writers, and the term young is very flexible. When I started the program in 2009, it applied to 14 to 19-year-olds, right?
Yeah. So my background, I don't know if this is relatable. Like, music composition was what I wanted to do when I was a youngster.
Oh, wow.
And so I had, as a kid, I would, go to private lessons with, composers and stuff.
Yeah.
Is it at all similar with, like, youngsters wanting to get in the writing and wanting some one-on-one instruction, or?
Not so much one-on-one. So it was more about kind of like a group workshop kind of setting, right? So in the beginning, it was maybe 12, 13 different people in a space, and it was kind of a long program. So there'd be a term of people coming in for sessions, and the term might be 3 or 4 months at a time. And for the first couple of years, we ran 3 terms a year. And yeah, great, wonderful, fantastic, really lovely vibe. The first few sessions were literally me kind of saying to young people that I would encounter through workshops that I ran in schools or workshops that I ran in other settings, hey, if you've enjoyed this session, I'm running this program at this art center. So it's the Barbican Art Center in London, largest art center in Europe of its kind. Hey, I'm running this workshop at the Barbican. Would you like to come along? If you've enjoyed this session, you might be interested in what it is that we're doing here. And we kind of had this tight-knit family or community of young poets who showed up And yeah, we just spent time writing, and I supported their writing, I supported their development. Around that, I supported their professional development. And over the years, it's kind of evolved into this beast of a program, right?
Yeah.
In the early days, it was literally just, hey, yeah, show up, come through. Now there's like this 3-tier application process you have to go through because hundreds of people want a seat. And it's I mean, the joy is there, the love remains. It's also really painful for me because I'm one of those kinds of people who wants to do everything that I can with all the people who are interested in this kind of work, and yet there are limits. There is only so much work that I can do. There are only so many people that I can feasibly or meaningfully work with in kind of a workshop program like this. So each year we now take on about 20 people, and there are hundreds of people that apply for seats within the program. It's like one long program that we run now. So we run from October to, this year we're running October to June. So it's kind of a long-term program throughout the year. And yeah, there's this point where I'm going through this application process where, maybe I've shortlisted 40, 50 people, and I need to cut it down to 20, maybe 22 people. Every year I say, I'm only going to work with 18 people this year. That's it. Let's cut it down. Let's get really minimal and sparse. Let's just focus on a smaller number of people. And then I go through this application process and I'm like, oh, I can't let that person go. Oh, no, this person's amazing. I guess the other thing to mention is, unlike many other programs, this is the kind of program where you can return, right? So it's not just about, and this is something very specific that I wanted to build into this kind of work. It's not just about, hey, you've been through this program, you've done your time, now go away. It's more about, you've been through this program and now you can apply to return up to another 2 times after your first year. So someone can be a Barbican Young Poet 3 times running. Just because they've been on the program, that doesn't necessarily mean they're guaranteed a slot each time they apply. But the application process is open to them, and I generally take 40 to 50% of my intake for each year from the reapplication. So there's this real sense of an ongoing community and this sense of peer learning as well. So it's not just about me saying, I am the esteemed authority in the space, I know everything and thou shalt listen to me. It's much more about, I'm holding a space, and yes, there are things that I can offer you, but also there are things that you can offer each other. So let's do this together. And that's been really important to me as a way of establishing this as a program that does have that sense of community at its heart. So that's how it's grown over these past years. And my role is, I am the guy who leads the sessions, or who holds the sessions. I plan those sessions. I have colleagues at the Art Center itself, the creative producer and the assistant creative producer. So as a team, we come together to make sure the program runs in terms of all its practicalities. I communicate directly with the poets in terms of what it is that they need to do. I plan the program in terms of the guest artists and guest facilitators that I want to bring in. I do everything that one might do in terms of managing a program like this. I offer feedback. There's no grading or marking for a program like this. It's not about do your homework so you can attain this particular kite mark of validation. It's more about, how do we establish practice, and how do I offer you some support in terms of what more you can do, or where else you might be able to go, or how you can challenge what you do as an artist or what you do as a writer. All of that work, bringing it back to the iPad, all of that work is work that I do through this iPad, whether it is, don't get me started on Google Drive and how Google basically trolls iPad users. I had a nope moment this afternoon when I was setting up a collaborative. There's a new project that I'm taking on, and I just needed a document and space that could serve up some files that wouldn't be too off-putting for someone who doesn't do this kind of tech stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, everyone has Google. I can use Google Drive. I can put a document in there, in a spreadsheet maybe. Fire up Google Drive, and yeah, I've got the app. Sure, yeah, I could do it that way. Fired Google Drive up in the browser, however, and I don't know if you've noticed this. Google Drive looks huge when you log into Google Drive in Safari on an iPad. It's like you've pressed Command plus 50 times and everything is just blown up huge. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'm a web guy. I can do this. Command nothing happens. There's something strange about the way that Google Drive sits on Safari.
Even after you log in and you're working.
Even after you log in, I'm there. You know, all my files are there, everything. But it's just this kind of huge, oversized display. It's the kind of display that my mother, 87 years old, bless her, she'd be very happy with. Because, you know, you've got the huge size text and whatnot. And it was just one more frustrating. There are a number of different gotchas with Google Drive on an iPad. But it was just the little straw that broke the back of the proverbial camel that had me say, nope, not doing it again. Done this too many times. Let's go for something else. So I started experimenting with this app called Coda. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I have. I'm not sure if it's the same Coda.
Right, yeah. So there's the Coda. What was that? Panic. Yeah. Does that still exist? Was
I'm
that
not sure
of
the current
point?
state of that. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, no, it's this kind of Coda is very close to Notion, in that you've got it's more of this kind of document-based thinking where the document houses all of these different functions, as opposed to having your kind of like file folder paradigm where you've got different docs within those files and within those folders that you access through different apps. Rather than that, it's like, here's your list of docs, and within each doc you can have your text, your spreadsheet, your database, all that kind of thing. So it's basically like a slightly different version of Notion. And I find it thus far, I mean, I've known about it for a while. I've started experimenting with it again today, and it just works really beautifully. There's an iPad app. As sometimes happens, the iPad app is not quite as how should we say, fully functional, let's say, as the web app.
Yeah, it's interesting this time. Like you mentioned, Google Apps and whatnot, and there's this talk in Vision OS how not everyone's going to have an app for the platform, and on the iPad, I often uninstall the Google apps because I'd rather go to the website for like docs and sheets. Like it seems like, I don't know, sometimes it's just go to the website. It's better.
Completely. Like working with Google Docs on the iPad, like just text selection. And simple little things that should be really easy. It's actually easier on as you say, it's easier on the web app than it is on the native app. And it kind of blows my mind.
That Coda may be similar, where just use the website,
Yeah, I mean, the web app, the native app kind of, it works. It's just, there are some nice kind of quality of life features in the web app that serve really well. And funnily enough, often I will prefer the native app, and if the native app isn't as fully functional, then I might be put off from the application. But Coda seems to be working really nicely. Not shilling for Coda. I am not on the Coda payroll or anything along those lines. Not a Jacob Samler sponsor or anything like that. But yeah, it's just an app that I've used just recently that seems to be facilitating collaboration and works well enough on my iPad that it allows me to get things done thus far. Working well.
How do you manage the application process? Like you have all these hundreds of applicants. What apps and what processes do you go through with that?
That's a great question, and that is one of the joys of, as a kind of freelance creative consultant, working in line with a larger institution. So the institution has a page on their website through which all applicants send their information. All of that information is then collated and sent to me. I get that as an overarching spreadsheet, password protected, and I also get a series of files attached to that. And I get to basically go down that spreadsheet and I kind of do my own things. Being someone who's interested in this kind of stuff, it's not necessarily expected by the people that I work with. Well, maybe they expect it now. I'm sent this basic spreadsheet, and then I'll start adding columns and equations and formulae and whatnot, just to be able to sort things. And so that actually goes into numbers.
Okay.
For me, really simply, and going into numbers, that allows me to very easily kind of create a column that allows me to do my yes, no, maybe, and group those together, so I can very easily work through the sheet. And I can tally, I can keep an eye on how many people I've selected, and I can, judge things on the basis of I've already got 40 people shortlisted. I only need 45. This is where, and I can make all those kinds of this. It's worked as a really lovely workflow, actually.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah. I'd imagine you're reviewing the writing samples and seeing what if they have the potential and where they're at now, kind of thing.
And it's. I mean, for that kind of program, again, it's a developmental program. So yeah, obviously, I'm looking out for fantastic writers, but more importantly, I'm looking out for people that I think I can offer something to, and people who I feel have space to grow, and who are invested in that notion of growth and learning more so than I want to be kite marked by being selected for this program. So it's a bit of a juggle to get that balance right, to get that balance of really interesting writing here, but also space to grow, room to develop, willingness to learn. But yeah, that's what I'm trying to strike the balance of.
I'd imagine calendaring. You mentioned it previously. You use two different apps. Is important, trying to manage your schedule and collaborating with different people at the initiative. What's calendaring look like for you, and how do you manage all that?
I could not live without some kind of calendar. Well, no, I could live without a calendar app. I just wouldn't live very well, and there'd be a lot of people upset with me. I live by my calendar app. That is what tells me where I need to be when. And yes, it's, again, I try and keep as much of this as simple as I possibly can. So for me, it's Fantastical and the native calendar app. I only use a single Google Calendar at the moment for events, really. Well, no, not for events, for like managing invitations that come from various different sources and whatnot. And that is all synced into Fantastical and Calendar, so I can access it through the one interface. But other than that, everything else is Apple Calendars. I have a few different calendars so I can separate out different types of events. But yeah, it's a pretty simple setup in terms of calendaring. I guess one thing that might be a little more interesting is that I also use, actually, I'm not sure how many people do this. I use my calendar as a log of things that I have done, not just things that I should do or things that are upcoming in the future. So I actually use my calendar as a basis for time tracking, for example. And again, that's something that comes from drafts. So I use drafts as like my daily, the fashionable term these days, I think, is interstitial journaling. Basically, if we're not familiar with interstitial journaling, it's just this idea of keeping a log of the things that you do as you're doing them, as you're working through your day. So I kind of think of my interstitial log or my daily journal as a tool for attention management. So yeah, I've got tasks in Goodtasks, which we haven't spoken about yet. We'll get there. I've got tasks in Goodtasks, things that I need to do by particular dates or times, or just things that need to be done at some point. But in drafts, that is logging the things I'm actually doing. And with the way that I work in drafts, once I've kind of clarified what my list of things is for the day, and I'm just kind of ticking them off as I go, what I'll do is I'll check into a task and check out. So I've got a particular key press combination that allows me to say this task is in progress, and it adds a little tag. And when I mark that task done, which again is another key press, just Command D, done, marking it in progress or checking in adds a start time at the beginning of that line. Marking it done adds an end time and then also triggers Fantastical's URL scheme to add that task to the calendar with the beginning and start time, right?
Yeah.
So it's really simple time tracking. And again, at the end of the day, I've kind of got this record of the things that I've spent time doing through a day. And I kind of got there because, again, I have one of these minds that doesn't do. So there are all these different apps, right? All these different apps for tracking different aspects and elements of your life. And they're great and they're wonderful. If we went to my App Store purchases area, you would see I'm sure it could be classified as some kind of illness or something like this. I've got tons of different apps for different functions and features. I should have my own site with reviews of things and whatnot, because the number of apps I've tried and tested for various different things. So talking about time tracking, I've got a lot of different time tracking apps that I've tried, and none of them have ever stuck for me because they demand a dedicated function. I need to go to the time tracking app, or I need to add my tasks to that time tracking app and manage tasks in that way, which feels like an added function, so at some point,
yeah,
it's extra work, and it's another habit that you have to establish in order to reap the benefit of that. And it has made much more sense for me to fold as much of that as possible into one place. So yeah, in Drafts, I can access Drafts. It's not just my writing space. It's like I saw someone else write this a few years back, and I was like, yeah, this is me. Drafts is basically my operating system. Drafts is my OS, right? It's my attention management. It's my writing space. It's my way of getting things done. It's everything for me in that regard. And it means, because I'm already there, adding like that next component, like for example, time tracking, it just makes sense because I'm there already. It's not adding another function. It's just another little workflow within that one space that I'm already maintaining.
So your tasks are in Goodtasks?
Yeah, Goodtasks.
And it pulls it into drafts in some way.
Yeah.
Is it using the reminders backend for syncing that across?
This is exactly it. So Drafts has this wonderful facility for JavaScript actions and functions. I mean, if you're using Drafts on the Mac, you can also write ActionScript. AppleScript. I'm thinking Flash from back in the day. Wow, that's a throwback. You can also write AppleScript and whatnot, but yeah, for my use on the iPad, you've got these JavaScript libraries that allow you to access calendar, events, and you can access reminders and all these things. So what I have is, in the morning, I have this kind of daily journal function. I will, first thing, top of the day, press a button, and my daily journal comes up, and that daily journal will scour my system, and it will pull in all of the events that I have for that day, and it will pull in all of the tasks that are due that day or have a date that relates to the day that I'm on. So I've got this one document, this one draft that shows me all of the items that I need to pay attention to for that day, and then I can just work through that and tick things off as I go. I do have it set up so that when I mark a task done in Drafts, here you go, you might be excited at this one, for any Drafts nerds or geeks out there, yeah. I've got it set up so that when you mark the task done in Drafts, it will also automatically mark it done in reminders as well, which ticks it off in Goodtasks. Yeah, that may be a little more. I mean, there are so many actions in Drafts that I've made that were really just proof of concept. It was like, is it possible to do this thing? Yes. Should I really do this thing? Maybe not. Maybe that's a bit of overkill, but it works. It works beautifully. Yeah.
Jumping ships a little bit. Changing a train of thought here. Your iPad home screen widgets. How big into widgets are you? Interactive widgets are now a thing. How has that changed for you?
There was a point at which I used to manage app icons on my home screen, as so many of us do. These days, I pretty much don't have. I've got one folder of inputs on my first home screen. So I've got two screens, right? I try and keep as few things to kind of scroll through or swipe through as possible. So I've got two home screens. And on the first one, the main one, I've only got one folder, which is a folder of inputs, and that's got like Reader, Omnivore, Kindle, reading apps basically, and kind of media trackers in it. It's got 8 apps in there. Everything else on my home screens, it's all widgets, right? There are no other app icons on my home screen. And again, this means that my home screens are just providing me with information and useful information in terms of things I need to do, things I want to do, things I should be doing. I can just look at those home screens at a glance and say, this is where I am, this is where I need to be, this is how I orientate myself. So one of those widgets, for example, is, again, I feel like this is the drafts appreciation show. One of those widgets is a drafts widget, which I've programmed to show me just the current task that's active. Because again, I have the kind of brain that will, it's like, there's a shiny thing, go over and do that thing when I'm supposed to be doing, a million other tasks and whatnot. I will lose track of what it is that I'm supposed to be doing, or I will go deep focus into something and lose that sense of what it was that I was supposed to be doing that pushed me into that deep focus, right? So there's a widget on my iPad home screen, which is literally just, this is the task that you've marked as in progress. And it just focuses that and shows that up. So at a glance, switching between apps or going back through the home screen, I can very quickly see, oh yeah, this is why I've just spent the past 2 hours browsing things on Safari or browsing through Pinterest or whatnot. This is what I'm actually supposed to be doing. Let me get back to that, right? Yeah, it's just purely widgets. Couple of those widgets are interactive. I haven't been that blown away by interactive widgets. It's nice to have, don't get me wrong. But I haven't really made that much use of the interactivity in widgets thus far. So Goodtask has, you can tick tasks off from from the widget, but I don't do that. The widget really just provides me with the information, and more often than not, again, if I'm going to tick something off, it's likely to be via drafts or when I'm actually in the application for those things that I manage just in Goodtask. So yeah, interactivity, lovely thing. I'm not using it so much, but widgets, oh yes, please, every day, all day and day. Yeah, there are some apps that I really do wish had widgets. So, for example, I'm a Fitbit user. Mm-hmm. And that whole notion, like, I love the idea of having the iPad home screen as a dashboard, which is essentially what I'm doing, right? It's just this kind of information that I can get a quick overview of where I am. And apps like Fitbit, which again, actually is just occurred to me, is now owned by Google. Google, sort it out, guys. Come on.
Fitbit was such a cool company in the early days. I remember losing my little pebble sized little thing that just go strapped into your pocket or whatever, and they just replaced it when you lost it. Like, it was such a cool little company back then. Yeah,
they really have been cool, and there are various different cool things about them. But yeah, just the iOS and iPad. Well, you can add the Fitbit app to iPad OS. Obviously, it's more designed for the iPhone, but yeah, no widgets. It just, like, give me my information in a widget, please. Please don't have me needing to check into each individual app just to get an overview of where I am and where I need to be.
In your notes here, iThoughts came up here. How are you using that app?
I will say honorable mention to iThoughts. So iThoughts was the mind mapping app that I was using prior to Mindnode. And iThoughts is a fantastic app. It really does do very well in terms of mind mapping, and it is a little more powerful than Mindnode in terms of being able to target specific nodes. So you could actually, like, write via URL schemes, you could write nodes from other apps into specific mind maps. So say, for example, if I had some text in a draft, I could highlight that text, trigger off a shortcut that would transfer that text directly to a node within a specific map. You could do all that kind of specifically pointed targeting, which Mindnode still hasn't quite achieved. It's on the roadmap, I believe, but hasn't emerged yet. I really wanted to experiment because Mindnode has the facility to create reminders directly. I was kind of interested in experimenting with that. So at some point mid last year, I ended up switching from iThoughts to Mindnode. And so more of my work at the moment is in Mindnode than is in iThoughts, but I've still got a lot of love for iThoughts.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then notes you share with me, Raindrop, an app I've not really heard of, came up in your list for bookmarking.
Oh yeah, Raindrop. I mean, I'm from the delicious generation of bookmarking from way back when. I mean, wow. Who knows how many of those links are dead from those days? The web is forever and is not forever simultaneously. Yeah, Raindrop is basically an extension of what it is that I used to do with Delicious, right? So yeah, I've used Delicious, Pinboard, a few other bookmarking apps, and I've landed with Raindrop. Raindrop is again, there's something about the fact that you can change the layout and the styling of your different collections of bookmarks that works really well for me. So for example, one of my collections is just an acquisitions collection. It's like a list of things that I've seen that I'm like, oh yeah, I might like to pick that up. Different bags, different pieces of tech, different accessories, keyboard switch, whatever. And I've been able to, with Raindrop, you can have a gallery, kind of gallery style layout. And that's just, it's a small pleasure, but it's great to be able to just scan that list of things that you've kind of pegged for acquisition, just very quickly visually just scroll through and say, okay, yeah, that was a thing that I said I was interested in picking up. Let me add that to the shopping cart. Bum, 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 these. Yeah, cool, great, wonderful. So for that kind of, yeah, it's got all of the functions that you would expect from a regular bookmarking application. So it does a certain amount of archiving. So again, protecting you against dead links, it allows you to call up the archived version of the link as it was when you saved it, right? These kinds of things are really useful for that kind of basis. And yeah, you can, if you wish to do so, you can use it as a read it later kind of app, and you can also, so it does have a highlighting function in there as well. So you can highlight things within the documents that you've saved. And it will store those specific highlights as you wish. I don't really use it for that. I just use it as a straight bookmarking application. But yeah.
Where's the differential coming for you for bookmarking versus read it later? Because I know you also use Omnivore for read it later.
I'm one of those people who, again, we've spoken about this illness. I have too many apps for the same thing. So I don't just use Omnivore. Reeder, Reeder, is my my primary read it later app. Okay. I'm fiercely loyal to Reeder. It's a fantastic app. It's RSS feeds and read it later, and I love it for that. I've started using Omnivore recently, a lot because of the voices. They've got some fantastic text to speech. And being able to, there are certain articles and items that, yeah, I want to read, and I can get that information. I can get the information that I need just via reading. Great. I can pick out the paragraphs as I'm going. I can skim over, or I can spend the time and really get into the text. Great. Wonderful. But there are certain apps that are just beautiful to listen to. That I can listen to while doing the dishes or while going out for the walk and whatnot. And obviously that's more iPhone than it is iPad. But yeah, Omnivore,
like a playlist of here's this list of read it laters and do this back to back, or
you can't, as far as I'm aware, you can't. This is at the top of my list for feature requests.
Yeah.
So what I'll tend to do is I mean, yes, I've got my kind of recently added list, but I can't just set it up to play one after the other.
Okay.
And I'll often, depending on the task, select my long reads.
Yes.
So I'll go for the 20-minute, 30-minute kind of long items, rather than the 2-minute ones kind of thing. But yeah, Omnivore is great for that. I mean, it's a fantastic app in its own right. It's great for read it later stuff, but it's for me personally, because I'm kind of loyal to Reader, I'm using both of them, and I'm using Omnivore specifically for that kind of text to speech function. You asked what the difference is for me between something like Raindrop and something like Reader for read it later.
Yeah.
And for me, really, there's a workflow that I've established because a lot of my incoming items come in via RSS. Having RSS and my read it later repository in the same app has proven to be really useful. Raindrop, yes, you can get things into Raindrop really easily. Yeah, great, wonderful. But it feels like Raindrop for me is more of the archival kind of setup. That's more, aside from capturing bookmarks for like the acquisitions that I was speaking about earlier, Raindrop is more about like, I've read something in Omnivore and I want to keep it. I want to be able to reference it in the future, so I'm just going to send it over to Raindrop and tag it so that I can call it up again when I need to. So Raindrop is more of the store for me. Read it later. Reader, sorry, is where the reading happens, and the filtering. And I will say also about Omnivore, Omnivore has a really good Obsidian kind of link. So the highlights that you capture in something like Raindrop pretty much stay in Raindrop. I think there is a way of using IFTTT to get some things out, but I haven't really figured out a meaningful workflow for that kind of thing. Highlights in Omnivore, yeah, you can set that up so that they sync direct to Obsidian. And that is also something that I'm enjoying experimenting with, that might become more of a solid workflow for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. And then it appears that instead of signing up for a newsletter and putting in your email address, you've elected to use a service so your email inbox does not get bombarded. Is that what I'm seeing in the notes here?
Tim, yeah, I can't do newsletters. I can't do newsletters in my inbox. I get enough email as it is. I've had the same email address for 20 plus years.
Yeah, I wish this hide my email address feature that iCloud added like a couple years ago was there when I started email, because it's too late. It's too everything.
It is too late. This is it. So, I mean, all of the things that I signed up for way back when I was fresh and young and didn't know what it was that I was letting myself in for. Yes, I could press the unsubscribe button, and I regularly try to do so, but yeah, it defeats me now. So I don't want to add. Email is not the place for me to spend time actually reading things like articles and things like this. Email is a communication space. It's somewhere for me to receive tasks, receive notifications, and then figure out what it is that I need to do with those, how I need to act on them. If I want to spend time reading, that happens in a different space. So yeah, I'll use Kill the Newsletter as a service. KillTheNewsletter.com, which I'm always a bit weirded out by the domain name, and I feel bad. I feel bad that there's some newsletter owner who will see a sign up, and the sign up is something at KillTheNewsletter.com. It's like, what is that communicating? But it is literally just it provides you with an RSS feed. So you get an email address that you can use to add to the newsletter, and then you get an RSS inbox that you can sign up to in your RSS reader. So they get an email address, you get an RSS feed, and away you go. No inbox required.
Excellent. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah,
my inbox
works really well for me.
Yeah, very cool. Airtable. How are you using that app?
That is, I mean, there's nothing really rocket science-ish about it. It's a basic, I mean, there are many fantastic and amazing things you can do with Airtable. I use it as a way of keeping track of membership for my writing program because there's this community, right? So I was speaking about the idea that it's not just here are some people, they're there for a term and then they go. I kind of want to maintain communications over a period of time. Now, obviously, I have to do this sensitively. We live in an age of GDPR and whatnot, so I have to communicate with people and say, do you still want to be a part of this, so on and so forth. But it's been really useful for saying, here are my people. These different people have been on the program in these different years. They've been involved in these different projects. So it's basically a relational database setup. And yeah, it allows me to manage who's been involved in the program, what they've done through the program, and keep tabs on that so that I can communicate with them in meaningful ways. And it gives me the ability to kind of get a sense of or overview of if I'm sending out opportunities for people to get involved with beyond the regular core offer of the program, I can kind of see how many people sign up for things, how popular certain things are, who's been involved in a lot of different things. So if I want to kind of share some of the opportunities around, I can make those kinds of decisions. It's just really useful in that regard.
Very cool. Yeah, and it must be kind of cool to see where people have ended up. You know, it's been a while, so you have youngsters that are much older now. Yeah.
So the first poet that I worked with was 13 years old. The first young poet that I worked with through a program like this was 13 years old when I first met him. He's now, I think, in his early 30s. So this was beyond. This was before the Barbican Young Poets program, but then he signed up for the Barbican Young Poets program later when the program kind of kicked off. And yeah, he's grown now. And I just got news. Was it yesterday? Of one of the Barbican Young Poets who's now married and has a 5-month-old daughter, I think it is, that I just found out about. And yeah, it's wonderful. It is an amazing thing. So many artists who are also educators do this work on this kind of itinerant basis, right? So they're invited in as guests, and they don't necessarily get the opportunity to establish these long-running relationships, unless you're, kind of engaged as a professor or a member of faculty in some way. Yeah, you don't often get this opportunity to build these long-running relationships. And I've been blessed, really. I consider myself really, really fortunate to have been able to do the work that I do, to have been able to support this range of different people, some of whom have gone on to do amazing things, and some of whom are just amazing human beings, regardless of whether they've remained within the arts or not. I've been blessed with the opportunity to work with some amazing people and to establish these really long-running relationships. I've seen people grow and mature and become adults from having been children when I first met them. And yeah, it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. I give thanks regularly.
Something I was just stuck in my head here is when you're doing instruction or guidance or whatever, do you encourage handwriting, or is it digital, or what's that look like these days?
So I am open. I mean, there are so many different ways that people express themselves, and there's this kind of traditional way of thinking that encourages us to lock people into a certain authorized way.
Yeah, because I'd imagine just like I would probably write different handwriting versus typing, just the speed,
right?
And also, just the ideas would flow differently. I would think.
Completely. Now, slight tangent. I remember being in so I used to run this program where I travel out to Chicago each year and take a team of young teen writers to Chicago to participate in this kind of youth slam out there and see slam style poetry kind of stuff. And I remember running a workshop out there, And this was at a point when I was still in my kind of Japanese stationery phase,
Yes.
and very much about pens and paper and all this kind of thing. And yeah, again, there was this kind of traditional sense of, if you're in a poetry workshop, you're going to pull out your pad, you're going to pull out your pen, you've got your notebook, you're going to get writing down. And I just remember this moment where we were by the Beam in Chicago, and I set this writing challenge and expected everyone to pull out pen and paper and whatnot, and 90% of them pulled out their phones and started typing into phones. And that was a moment for me. And this was kind of
not even a keyboard. We got virtual.
Not even a keyboard.
Yeah.
This is it. Just thumb typing and whatnot. And this was a moment for me when I kind of really appreciated, we have to be open to the different ways in which people express themselves and the different ways in which people connect with things. I had this kind of paper fetish, really, but for these young people that I was working with, their computing device was a phone. And it really did. It challenged my thinking in terms of how flexible can we be in terms of allowing space for different people's ways of working. So yeah, in the program that I run these days, I acknowledge this. I'm not too fussed what it is that you write on. I'm not too fussed how it is that you write. And I will allow space for it as long as we get the writing down. I don't want anything to be a barrier. I don't want me saying, I expect you to pull out a piece of paper and a pen right now. I don't want that to be a barrier to you getting things done in the way that you need to. So in a session, when I set a writing challenge or offer a prompt, you'll see a range of different things. You'll see some people pulling out laptops and whatnot, some people going to their notebooks and whatnot, and all of it, it's all good.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah. When I lived in Los Angeles like a decade plus ago, I went to Poetry Lounge every week, and you would see all sorts of different people bring, their notepad up or their phone back in the day, and so very cool.
Yeah. Again, it's kind of it's been interesting, kind of observing how the culture around the technology has changed, even in a space like poetry and creative writing. Because again, poetry can be actually quite conservative when it comes to technology, right? Mm-hmm. There are ways in which certain edges of poetry can be quite resistant to the ways in which we work. So again, me working on an iPad in various different settings, there are some people who are just like, huh? I don't understand. Yeah. You mean you don't have a laptop? You mean you don't have a traditional computer? How does that work? And yeah, there are ways, even down to the visuals and aesthetics of the expectation of someone standing up in front of a microphone and pulling a pad or piece of paper out and reading from that versus someone pulling a phone out and reading from that instead. Just even that has been really interesting to observe the shift in over the years.
For sure. Yeah. So, another app/service that stuck out to me in the list that you sent over was exist.io.
Yes.
For personal tracking, and you're also using your time tracking stuff with the calendar. And how does all this kind of work together? Yeah.
So the time tracking in the calendar is slightly different from Exist, though Exist does have the ability to pull in information from your calendar and really just tell you how busy you were over certain stretches of time. But yeah, Exist is it sometimes gets lumped in with your kind of habit tracking apps and things like Streaks and that kind of stuff. Exist for me is more about, you could use it in that way, you could, but Exist for me, the power of Exist is more about insights, right? So you track certain things that happen, and then it will give you some information back in terms of trends over time. So for example, Exist plugs into various different systems. So again, Exist can connect to Fitbit directly. It can connect to Spotify. It can connect to Apple Health. I think there's a direct connection for Apple Health. So just by quote unquote existing with the apps that I have running, I can get, I've got a widget that basically kind of informs me about my daily and another widget that informs me about my weekly trends. So one of my exist widgets will tell me, hey, you didn't sleep particularly well last night. Last night's sleep was surprisingly short in relation to your average for a Wednesday, for example. You listen to more music on a Wednesday. And this is the particular band or artist that you've been listening to more so recently.
It pulls that data in from...
So that music data will pull in directly from Spotify. But yeah, it kind of gives you that ability to pull in a lot of different data, and it offers you these insights. So one other one is, you've been walking less this week. This is your average. This is what you've done this week. It doesn't tell you maybe you should get out and do some more walking, but that's the kind of response I have in my mind. It's like, oh, okay, I've been standing in front of these screens for a bit more than I should. Maybe I should get out and add some more steps to my Fitbit. So yeah, this is Exist for me. Exist is like those nudges towards the kind of activity that might be beneficial, but also just that sense of what have I been doing? Just that overview, that kind of that trend.
And you're tracking things that you care about. So these are things. Like these are things you want to be focused on. So it's a good reminder to do that stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's stuff that you might kind of lose sight of because, again, we might focus on the day to day. I feel that I didn't get great sleep last night, for example. But to be able to locate that within trends over time, that becomes even more meaningful, you know?
Yeah. So text manipulation is something that a lot of Mac people think that it's very important to have a Mac for all the crazy stuff you can do with that. But you're doing a lot of this with TextCase and Esse, ESSE.
I would say Esse, but I'm sure I can stand to be corrected on that.
Yeah, I was just making that up. Esse, yeah. So,
yeah. I use both of them. They're both available as kind of share sheet extension options, so you can highlight some text wherever it is that you are in iPad OS and send that highlighted or selected text through the share sheet extension to either of those apps, depending on what it is that you want to do. They overlap, so they're both pretty cool. They work in slightly different ways. I haven't yet mastered either or both of them. I have used them to good effect thus far, but I feel like there's another layer of mastery that I can achieve just in terms of refining that workflow. And I mean, that's I think there's also a point about iPad OS in there. I think in terms of share sheet extensions, I'd love to be able to add even one or two priority actions to the first menu that comes up when you long press on something, rather than having to get that menu up, press share, and then scroll down the list to find the thing that you want. But yeah, so Esse and TextCase, they work well, but I'm very aware of the fact that some of those functions, in fact, all of those functions that these apps do, I can do in drafts as well. It's just you know what it is? It's just a matter of setting up a workflow that makes sense. And I guess this is the joy and the pain of iPad OS. There are a number of different ways of doing things, and I think I haven't yet seen, and I'm sure as I say this, someone is going to jump up and say, what about this? I personally, in the way that I work, I haven't yet had a case of text manipulation that I couldn't do with drafts or even building something of my own through a shortcut, right? For me, it's just I haven't yet properly invested time in just smoothing out and refining a workflow. So TextCase and Esse, they work well for now, but I feel like there's a little refinement that I can put forward. So, for example, on my home screen, in my dock, I haven't really got apps. I've got one app folder there, but the other 4 icons are home screen shortcuts. I've got 2 for drafts. One's open a new draft. One is go to today's journal. And I've got this kind of utility shortcut. That utility shortcut, because it's in the dock, it means that whatever app I'm in, if I just swipe up from the bottom of that screen, that utility shortcut is available, right? And it means that, say, for example, you do the thing of copying some text from a web page, and you jump over to an email and you want to paste that text. And because you're copying it from a web page into email, you get a lot of the kind of formatting that comes with it,
Yes,
right? So
like
you
this text came from this website. Please support us or whatever. Yeah.
You get all of that, and also it might come up in a really large font, or it might come up with color, or any of that kind of stuff, right? So you just want the plain text, yeah? So I've set my utility shortcut up with an option for that. So as I go over to the Mail app, I can just call up that shortcut and press one of those options, which is clipboard to plain text. It will transform whatever's on the clipboard to plain text, and then all I need to do is paste into the email. That kind of really easy workflow, eminently possible with everything that we're currently afforded. It's just you have to be the kind of person who is willing to figure out what works best and how. Like putting that directly in a shortcut that sits in that dock, that requires having had that experience, or kind of following someone who shows you how to do that, to ensure that option is easily available wherever it is that you are, in a way that makes most sense for you. And again, when we're talking about what makes most sense for you, you'll have to figure out your own way. Maybe there isn't this kind of universal thing. You have to kind of put together your own path. And I think this is again, it's one of the blessings and curses of working in iPad OS at the moment. I mean, it's a part of computing generally,
Right,
really.
yeah.
But yeah,
You have to learn how Mac people do certain things. Like I would have to relearn some things on the Mac if I went back there.
exactly. Yeah.
Are there any apps that you use regularly that we haven't talked about that you'd like to talk about before you start to wrap it up?
I think we've covered pretty much all of them. I'll send another shout out to Obsidian. We've kind of referenced it, haven't spoken much about it. It's only really starting to now come into. Well, I've kind of looked towards Obsidian a number of times, and it's never grounded. And it's only just recently that I'm really like, oh, I finally get it. This is how it can work for me. I will also send a shout out to Mona, which is a fantastic Mastodon client. But yeah, I think we've pretty much covered. Oh, Documents. Documents is a kind of a legacy app for me. I mean, Files app has become really quite powerful over the years. I mean, so look, I started working with iPads from iPad 1. Right, I got my first iPad, and like a week after I got the very first gen iPad, the Mac laptop that I had at that time died. So all I had was the first iPad, and for a while I tried to make it work, and it really didn't.
Yeah, the iTunes file sharing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare, but I was really kind of I was invested in I was intrigued by what was possible, right? And it's been amazing to see how iPad OS and the various different native apps that have been made available through iPad OS, it's been amazing to see how they've grown over time. And again, the notion of having built-in file management, which I think now we pretty much consider to be a standard. Like, how would you be able to manage a device like this without file management, knowing that I was there all those years ago?
Yeah, and
Documents, it just wasn't.
Yeah, Documents was there day one, I think, and they had this weird way of managing stuff you had to do that then.
Yeah. And so with the way that files has grown, there's a lot that it has taken over, and there's a lot that's great for working within files that I don't necessarily need documents for. But because I'm used to working with documents, and it offers all, again, these kind of different quality of life things. So I can use documents as a music player if I wish. So I've got, again, legacy. I've got a whole music library stored in a Dropbox folder of kind of old CDs that I ripped over the years, right? And of course, there's an app for that. I used to use Evermusic and whatnot, but knowing that I can just access that folder via documents, and it provides a really nice interface for just playing through a folder of media files. Documents is really cool. I often use documents for marking up PDFs as well, and managing PDFs, like moving pages, that kind of PDF management stuff where you add new pages to a PDF document and all that. I use it for that quite a bit as well.
Yeah, it's a great kind of all-purpose app that does so much. Yeah,
it really is. Play as well. Play is a fantastic YouTube management tool application. I use it with Invidious, so you can set how it is that you want your YouTube videos to play, which I really appreciate. So you don't just have to open your regular YouTube interface from those YouTube items that you've saved. You can push them to other services. And it also accepts Vimeo videos as well. So yeah, works in a lovely way. And SQL. How can we forget SQL? SQL is a great little app for media tracking. So I used to have a number of different apps for, these are the books that I'm reading. I'm not really that much of a gamer, but I do have a Steam Deck.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the game, or these are the games that I'm kind of chilling out in at this point in time. And these are the TV shows that I might be checking in on. And to have all of that in one place in SQL, absolute joy. I would, and I've kind of already pushed this request through, so I shouldn't really make too much noise about this because I don't want to upset the developer in any way, shape, or form. But I will really love it as and when. So as it currently stands, when you go into SQL, the focus is more on like your wish list or things that are upcoming, right? And again, my brain also needs help in terms of, what am I actually reading again?
Yeah,
because I'll often have like 4, 5, 7 different books on the go. So being able to just see that list of currently active items is really lovely and useful. And I'm looking forward to the day that SQL allows you to set that page or that tab as your default view for when you go into the app, rather than these are the things that are up and coming. These are the things you want to watch in the future.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Looking forward to that. But yeah, that's me. That's. I think those are the apps that are kind of at the core of my iPad usage, and the apps that keep me kind of on the straight and narrow.
Very cool. Yeah. There is so much more I actually would love to dive into with you in this episode, but I think we should definitely do another episode at some point in the future. There's so much more to talk about, I'm sure, here.
Oh, I would love to. We didn't even touch on coding apps. Shout out to Runestone and Textastic and all of those different apps. We'll save that for part 2.
Yes, there will. Yeah, we need to do part 2 at some point because I need to. Yeah, we need to wrap it up. But before this becomes a 4-hour podcast. But thank you so much for your time today. Where can folks find what you're up to online and any places you want to promote?
Firstly, thank you for having me. It's a real joy. Like I say, I've been an avid listener to the iPad Pros podcast for a while now, so it's a joy to be able to kind of join the body of people who've been here. I am most active at the moment on Mastodon, so JSLR at toolsforthought.social. Shout out to Boris Mann for managing the Tools for Thought server. I am available on some of the more traditional social media. So yeah, there is a J. Sam LaRose Instagram page. I am available on the former the Dead Bird site, as it once was, but I don't really spend time on the traditional social media these days. So you can message me, you can kind of see what it is that I have done on Twitter, you can see what it is that I have done on Instagram, but Mastodon is pretty much where I'm at. And if you just search Jacob Sam LaRose, because I have one of those pretty weird and individual surnames, you'll be able to find me if you just put me into your chosen search engine. That's Jacob Sam -La space Rose. Thank you, people who gave me my name. Yeah, you'll find me.
Excellent. Yeah, and I'll link to all that in the show notes here. And yeah, thank you so much for your time today. This has been an awesome chat, and looking forward to having more of those in the future with you.
Thank you.
Well, that was my discussion with Jacob. My thanks to Jacob for his time recording, and my thanks to you for your time and attention tuning in. As a reminder, you can support the show and get early access at patreon.com/ApplePros or by subscribing in Apple Podcasts. With that, I'll talk to everyone again real soon.